Greg says, I think there are 100 ways to find out if your spouse is cheating or is about to cheat. The most obvious way is to walk into your bedroom and find some asshole pressing her into the mattress. My suspicions about Holly's possible infidelity arose in a less obvious way. Saturday turned out to be unusually cold. One of my chores was to install winter tires on Holly's Escape. I smiled as I got into her car. The driver's seat heating was turned on to 3. I turned it off before driving to the local tire shop and waited for them to change the tires. When I got home, Holly was dressed and waiting for me. Greg, I need to go to the mall. Do you need something? Some men might get worried hearing those words because it meant credit cards were about to take a serious hit. But Holly makes her own money, never overspends, and best of all, it meant I could relax in front of the TV and watch Saturday football. Holly didn't let her relax. Try not to spend the whole day in front of the TV. Kids need some dad time. Okay, love. 3 hours later, Holly returned to the house with one bag from Nordstrom. Not bad for 3 hours. I thought to myself. Then I remembered something. Baby, I left my sunglasses in your car. You forgot them. I put them in the console. I went to her car to get her sunglasses. As I reached over to grab them, I couldn't help but notice that the seat heating on her side had returned to 3. But why was there a 2 on the passenger side? When I returned to the house, I found Holly in the kitchen. Did you go shopping with anyone today? Holly made a strange face and waited a second before answering, No. Why do you ask? Damn, she must have just lied to me. Without a reason, just thought you'd been gone for a while and wondered if you'd had lunch with someone. Holly turned away, pretending to do something at the sink as she answered. No, I was completely alone. The passenger side heating set to 2 was the catalyst for my suspicions. I told Holly I was going down to my basement to cross a few items off her to-do list. The silence in my basement gave me time to think. It took half an hour of solitude and reflection to realize that all the signs were there lately. Coming home from work and not sharing details of his day, forgetfulness about our home and family, being harsh towards me over the smallest things. Yes, the signs were there. How did I recognize the signs of a cheating spousey? Because I've encountered this before. My first marry again did due to infidelity. But not my wife. It was I who was the traitor. I was the one who came home late or worked on the weekends. I was the one who forgot to bring home the groceries from the list that Carol, my first wife, gave me this morning. I was the one who made a big deal about little things and started arguments over them. My affair with a colleague was in its 4th month when Carol found out about it. The novel began in one of the most common ways. A little flirting, friendly dinners with general discussions about our partners and their shortcomings. It didn't take long before friendship grew into intimacy. Carol trusted me and would never have suspected anything if my cheating friend's husband hadn't told Carol by showing her the photos his private investigator had taken of us. Carol was devastated and said she couldn't believe someone could betray her trust in such a way. Despite my vow to remain faithful until the end of our days, she filed for divorce. Why should I believe you? 2 years ago you swore to leave everyone else. Look how that turned out. 3 months later I was single again. The thing is, I really loved Carol. My affair was stupid macho nonsense that led me to the abyss. A beautiful woman wanted to sleep with me, and I agreed to stroke my ego. I fooled myself that it was just friendship, that what I shared with another woman would not affect my relationship with Carol. In other words, I was stupid, like millions of other stupid traitors. A year after the divorce, I moved to the other side of the country, from Atlanta to Seattle. 2 years later, I met Holly, courted her, and got married. I told her about my first marriage but did not admit to adultery. I just said that my first wife could not come to terms with my then immaturity. Not entirely a lie, just not the whole truth. Why arouse suspicion? I would have learned my lesson and never cheated again. Holly and I were married for 6 years. We had 2 beautiful children when the temptation returned. My job required me to attend training every 6 months. 20 field officers met for 3 days at our Dallas headquarters twice a year. Most of the same 20 people attended each session, and we ended up becoming close. A friendship began, and there were even hints of a couple of novels. One of our group was a woman from the Cleveland office. Karen Bates was a beautiful single woman in her 30s who seemed to enjoy my company. We talked during breaks and lunches. One night, in what was probably my 4th class in Dallas, she asked if I would join some of them for dinner. It was a small group of 7 people. What harm could this do? It was a fun company. After dinner, we found ourselves in a bar where there was a dance floor and a band playing. I danced with Karen and 2 other women in the group. After about a few hours, I looked at my watch. It was midnight in Dallas and 10 o'clock in Seattle. I rushed out of the bar without saying goodbye to anyone. On my way back to the hotel, I called Holly from my cell phone. Sleepy Holly answered after the 2nd ring. "Holly, this is Greg. I woke you up?" "It's okay, baby. I'm just glad you called." "Sorry it's so late. I went out to dinner and had a few drinks with the others. I wanted to call to tell you that I love you. I'm walking back to the hotel now. Should I call you when I get to the room?" "No, baby. I'm just glad to hear your voice. How was your day?" "Long. Too long. I'm leaving tomorrow at 3. I'll land at the Seattle airport at 5:30 and be home for a late dinner. I miss you." "I miss you too. Children too. Fly safely. I can't wait to meet you." As much as I wanted to stay on the phone, I didn't want to keep Holly up. She held the defense of the house. She took care of the children and went to work. It can tire a person out, and I wanted her to rest before I returned home tomorrow. We hung up, exchanging I love yous with each other as I walked into the hotel. I opened the door to my hotel room, sat on the bed, and collapsed. God, that was close. One more drink and one more dance with Karen, and we'd probably be having sex right now. One thing saved me. I suddenly realized all the warning signs, calls from the novel that destroyed my first marriage. That night I vowed that I would not ruin my marriage to Holly like I had with Carol. Over the next 4 years, I was able to keep my promise. I avoided Karen Bates and several other temptations I encountered. I'm no George Clooney, but I had the opportunity to make love to some stranger if I wanted, but I kept it zipped up and remembered the oath I'd made to Holly, and as far as I knew, she was still faithful to me. With a renewed sense of direction, I walked up the stairs and into our kitchen. Our 2 children, Sal and Barb, were sitting at the kitchen table chatting with their mother while she prepared dinner. It was worth fighting for, but I needed to know how far Holly had come. Has she crossed the line in the sand yet? Was she in love with this guy? Where was the border? I felt Holly's eyes on me as I walked into the room and grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. I sat down between the children and joined the conversation. Holly looked at the 3 of us and smiled. At that moment, I realized that she loved me. So why the hell would she put our family in danger? Or was I too hasty? I tried my best to appear normal and ignorant throughout the weekend. We even made love on Sunday morning before going to Sunday service. On Monday morning, I asked my boss for some free time to do some personal business. He was kind enough to provide it to me without further questioning. I made several calls and arranged a meeting with the investigator. On Monday afternoon, I sat in the waiting room of Sullivan Investigations, waiting to meet with Jake Sullivan. I entered his office when the secretary announced it to me. Jake was a large man who reminded me of a TV show my dad watched when I was a kid. Dad had a full set of videotapes, on which the leading role was a fat actor with a mustache. What was his name? Frank Conrad or something like that. Jake saw the expression on my face, my blank stare, and laughed. It was Frank Cannon, with William Conrad in the title role. That's what you're trying to remember, right? I can't read minds. They often look at me in the same questioning way. My wife says I should shave my mustache, but it's more fun this way. Jake and I exchanged a few more pleasantries and got down to business. If what you told me is true, it won't take more than a week. We will conduct a short observation with a team of 2 people. We'll gather everything you need to make some decisions. The amount should not exceed $10,000. If you agree, Sheila needs to sign the contract, and I'll have 2 operatives take care of it by Wednesday. $10,000 sounded steep, but probably cheap in the long run. all things considered. I agreed, shook Jake's hand, and signed the contract at his secretary's desk. I returned to Sullivan's investigative unit Friday night holding my breath. Greg, I have good and bad news. Crap. The good news is that your wife hasn't gone to bed with that asshole yet. By the way, this asshole's name is Derek Turner. Derek Turner is Holly's boss. I met him 3 or 4 times at Holly's work events. I never thought highly of this guy, and I had a feeling he thought even less of me. Always talked down to me. I had to admit that he was a handsome man, about our age, and kept himself in shape. As this flashed through my mind, I noticed that Jake watching me, waiting. Damn, this guy was in the right business. Astute, waited until I was ready to hear the next part. I nodded my head, and he continued. The bad news is that she might be planning to sleep with him soon. He asked her to join him for an out-of-town job conference in 3 weeks. She hasn't made a commitment, but she's definitely on the edge. 2 of my operatives watched both of them on Wednesday and Thursday. One sat next to them on Wednesday at the diner, the other watched on Thursday. None of the operatives were spotted, I can assure you. On both days, there were no outward signs of affection, no handshakes, kisses, anything physical, and we were able to record conversations on both days. Operatives wear special bags with parabolic microphones. I'll give you both tapes so you can listen for yourself. There is some background noise. You may have to listen a few times to get used to it and hear everything that was said. I took the tapes, 2 CDs actually, from Jake and treated them like they were poison. That's not all. Based on what we heard on Wednesday, I followed Turner after work Wednesday and Thursday evenings. On Wednesday, he headed straight to his home, and on Thursday he left work and met another man at the Metropolitan Grill Bar. They didn't seem to care that they were in a public place. I couldn't hear the entire conversation, but I caught enough to know that your wife is not their first target. Based on what I heard, I confirmed this morning that the other man is James Young, Turner reports to Young. Looks like one of the previous victims was Karen Johnson. Your wife is the replacement for this Miss Johnson. Young asked Turner how the seduction went and confronted him when Turner told him she resisted. Turner said he felt he would be successful once she went on this business trip with him. I thought that a little alcohol and dancing would overcome her inhibitions. He even confirmed something we have on one of the lunch break tapes, that Turner lured your wife with the possibility of future promotion if she took part in the program. Jake waited a few more seconds while I took it all in. He offered me a cup of coffee from the pot on his desk. I refused, already too nervous. Jake continued. I can't stand such idiots. I wrote my notes immediately after their conversation. The conversation took place in a public place, and there is no expectation of confidentiality. My recordings may be used in a civil suit against these 2 and the company. If you need me to, I will testify on the record and in court. I'll charge you less than usual just to keep these idiots down. Costs today are almost half of my original estimate. If you need your wife to be watched this weekend, it will probably eat up the rest of your deposit. I thought about it for just a second. No, I'll listen to the tapes, but if what you told me is all that's happened so far, maybe we can get over it. I'll talk to her tomorrow. There's no point in delaying it. Unless she surprises me. She will agree to counseling, and that should help. I need to think about filing a lawsuit. Right now, I'm inclined to agree that these 2 assholes need to suffer. Jake shook my hand. Good luck. Let me know if you need anything else. Well, let's pay it off next week, just in case. I went home early and listened to the CDs on my computer. Derek Turner spent most of both lunches trying to seduce Holly. He spent some time trying to convince Holly that I must have been cheating on her when I attended training in Dallas. I enjoyed hearing how Holly defended me when Turner spoke ill of me. He tried to convince her that it was in her best interest to go with him to the next conference. It would be good for her career. He was due for a promotion soon, and Holly had a great chance of getting his job when that happened. Turner took the time to praise Holly's looks, intelligence, and abilities. When he said that it would be great to meet her in a more private setting, somewhere away from the daily routine, and find out if their feelings for each other were more than just friendship, Holly interrupted him, saying that it's time to go back to the office. This was the end of Thursday's recording. I felt Holly was resisting but giving in to temptation. The attraction was understandable. I've been like this before, and I know it happens. If someone had intervened before my affair, my first marriage may have survived. It was time to intervene to save my second marriage. I called Holly's parents to ask if they could watch the kids this weekend. Holly's mother was delighted at the opportunity. I picked up Sal and Barb from school, came home with them to pack their bags, and took them to their grandparents for 2 days of pampering. Holly called me at 5 to ask if she could come home a little later and have drinks with a few of her colleagues. She was stunned when I told her, "No, come straight home. Now we need to discuss something. This can't wait? Not if you want to be married to me after this weekend." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about divorce if you're not home in the next half hour." "Greg, why are you talking about divorce? What's happening?" "Holly, come home. I'm not going to discuss this over the phone." I hung up. 26 minutes later, Holly walked through the door. She looked like she was crying. "Greg, what about divorce? Where are Sal and Barbara?" "They are with your parents. Now tell me about your romance with Derek Turner." I don't think I could have surprised Holly more if I had punched her in the nose. The effect was almost the same. Her eyes widened and she stammered until she said the words. "I never cheated on you." I took a chance and called her bluff. "There are other types of betrayal. Just because you may not have had sex with him yet doesn't mean you haven't cheated. Now tell me about last Saturday night." Holly froze. "We didn't do anything. We just talked. I swear to you." "Why on Saturday? Don't you two talk enough at work and during lunches together? Was I being followed?" "You can't change the subject. Tell me about your Saturday meeting." "I picked Derek up at his apartment. We went shopping and had lunch. I dropped him off at his house. He invited me to come in, but I said no and returned home. No kisses, no hugs, no touching or stroking. He tried to kiss me when he got out of the car. I turned my head and he kissed my cheek. I swear that's it." "So he went shopping with you?" "What did you buy?" Now Holly looked scared. "A dress and something else." "Stay here." I ran upstairs and looked into the closet in her bedroom. The Nordstrom bag was half hidden behind her hanging pantsuits. Inside the bag was a little black dress, a pair of heels, and, worst of all, crisp white silk lingerie. I went downstairs, gritting my teeth. "What is this for?" Holly covered her face with her hands. She had been crying since I left the room. "Derek made me buy a dress and heels in case he convinced me to go to the conference with him next month. If I don't go to the conference, they want you to invite me somewhere." "What about underwear?" Holly put her head in her hands again and sobbed. "I'm sorry. He bought this for me." "What were you going to do?" "I don't know, but I swear I didn't do anything to him. Nothing physical, but, I couldn't finish." "Are you going to divorce me?" "Depends on whether you want to stay married to me. Are you ready to end this shit with Turner?" "Yes, I want to be your wife." I never doubted it, and neither should you. And yes, I never want to be alone with Derek again. Holly rose from her chair and walked over to me. She sat on my lap and buried her head in my chest. "I am so sorry. Please don't hate me." I thought about throwing her off my lap, but I couldn't. "I don't hate you, but that will change if you destroy our family." Holly and I spent that evening and all of Saturday talking about how we were going to move forward with our lives. If I had any doubts about Holly's love for me and our children, those doubts were dispelled by the time we picked up the children on Sunday morning. We decided to go together to a family psychologist. Holly had to reconcile her love of family with the temptation to have an affair, although it became obvious that Derek Turner was an experienced seducer of women. For example, Holly said that on Monday morning, Turner asked if I had seen her Nordstrom purchases. When she replied that I had not looked in the bag, he turned it into another insult. "You see, your husband doesn't care about you. He probably has a girlfriend on the side." I told Holly that the only reason I didn't ask about buying it was because I was starting to get suspicious and needed time to think about it without losing my cool. I decided to tell Holly why my first marriage ended and how close I came to screwing it up a second time. I thought a counselor could help me tell Holly the truth in a way that wouldn't destroy my family. Honestly, our relationship could use a boost, and the right counselor could help us get there. We also decided to contact Holly's HR department and file a formal complaint against Turner. Although Holly was outraged after reading Jake Sullivan's notes on the Turner-Young conversation, everyone in the office was wondering what happened to Karen Johnson. She quit and left without saying a word to anyone. Holly resisted until we met with our consultant on Tuesday. She convinced Holly that it was the right action, and we returned the dress, shoes, and underwear to Nordstrom. As much as I wanted to take Holly outside in a dress or take the lingerie off her cutie body, I couldn't look at them because Turner had chosen them. A year has passed since that weekend. Both Derek Turner and James Young were terminated for cause based on Holly's complaint, and after the HR director listened to the tapes, read Jake Sullivan's notes, and had a follow-up conversation with Jake. None of them received severance pay. They just quickly kicked me out the door. Holly heard that they threatened legal action, but backed down after they were threatened with countersuits. By the way, about lawsuits. In a letter from our attorney, Holly received a check for a good amount from the company, and nothing more was said after she signed the application. We might be tempted to press the issue, but Holly's company did the right thing. They got rid of the scoundrels and quickly settled accounts with her. The consultant really helped us deal with our problems. Holly was surprised to hear the real reason why my first marriage failed. She was hurt when, during our first session, I told her how close I had come to cheating on her. The reason I decided to come clean was simple. Holly needed to know that she wasn't the only one who might give in to temptation. Our marriage would be stronger if she didn't carry the burden of guilt. In the end, neither of us crossed a physical line, which made the emotional boundaries we crossed still damaging, but not unforgivable. I truly believe that Holly and I are happier now than we were in the first year of our marriage. Both children are doing great. It is probably easier to raise children when two adults who love each other are involved in raising them. Several important lessons were learned. First, don't use another person to replace the emotional support you should receive from your spouse, especially when the other person has a reason to put up barriers between you and your spouse. This may start with friendly dinners, but often ends in bed. Secondly, if you are doing something that you are embarrassed to tell your spouse about, you probably shouldn't do this. Third, communication. Are you having problems with your spouse? Tell him about it. I'm not naive. There are some marriages that can't be saved by communication and sharing, but if your marriage is worth saving, make time for communication. Well, either way, that's my 2 cents, and it's worth every penny. This story was written after a young couple down the road recently separated and are now preparing for divorce. In fact, it is a disgrace, and their children will probably suffer. Kate chatted with my wife for a bit, and I spent the afternoon with my husband at the local pub. Of course, we changed the names, locations, and endings. The problem was that in the case of our neighbors, things had gone too far. Too many lines were crossed, and they were unable to recover from the damage done. We're afraid their story doesn't have such a happy ending.